Hi, good morning all. My name's Harry. I'm the marketing coordinator here at Bluestream. I just want to say thank you very much for joining us. So today, as you're fully aware, we're going to be looking at why desktop authoring is still favored over cloud-based authoring. And as we get started, I'd just like to say a big thank you to CIDM for our partners over there for co-sponsoring this event or the webinar. And yeah, we've got some lovely stuff to talk about today. We've got a couple of guests as well. If you have any questions, obviously feel free to put them in chat. We'll address them at the end of this webinar with a live Q&A. And we look forward to obviously having a great in-depth discussion. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Patricia, working over at CIDM, and she would like to tell you about some upcoming stuff that's happening with CIDM. Hi, Trish. I'll pass it over.
Thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our CIDM webinar with Bluestream on why desktop authoring is still favored over cloud-based authoring. They will be sending you and all who registered to this webinar in the webinar recording link in your email. Also, we post this and all our past webinars on the CIDM website, so please take a look. Before we get started, just want to tell you a little bit about Comtech and CIDM. Comtech has been helping clients produce better technical content since 1978. Whether you're looking for consulting services, you need to train your team, Comtech can help. We deal with content strategy, information modeling, taxonomy development, process maturity assessment, user studies and benchmark studies, and all DITA implementations. On the CIDM side, we're a membership organization facilitating the sharing of information about current trends, best practices, and developments within the information development industry. We have in-person and online conferences. We have members' quarterly workshops, manager roundtable discussions, and our best practice quarterly newsletter, and 5 membership level opportunities. Coming up very shortly in September.
Sorry, just one moment. Do you have your screen to share as well? Sorry.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. You're referencing things.
I know. Wow, there you go. That was a faux pas. Yep. We got it up now. Thank you so much, Harry.
No problem. No problem.
Yes. So first off is in September 15th through the 17th, our Convex Ideas. It is online. This year's theme is Shaping Tomorrow, Evolving Roles, Smarter Content, and Boundless. We have the agenda available online with 14 expert sessions and 2 tracks. It's an easy to attend schedule. There we go. Next up is our in-person DITA Europe in Brussels, Belgium on the 2nd and 3rd of February. So the call for speakers is now open, so hurry to get those submissions in. The deadline to submit is September 1st. And also save the date for Convex Pittsburgh on April 13th through 15th of 2026. It will be in the Pittsburgh Marriott City Center Hotel. Very excited. We will be posting the call for speakers shortly. So the fall workshop schedule, using AI to write and deliver content, a brand new workshop for us. That'll start on September 23rd, incorporating AI into your content strategy. That's on the 24th of September. Editing Essentials for Writers and Editors. That'll be in India Standard Time starting on the 25th of September. DITA Basics on the 25th of September as well. And Advanced Reuse Strategies as well on the 25th. So upcoming webinars, our next webinar will be on the 30th of July with IC Tech, AI, XML, and Microsoft Word working together. Join us for the next members quarterly work. It's going to be with Taxonomy with Don Stevens. That'll be online August 21st. It's a free exclusive member benefit. And if you're not a member, well, we have those opportunities here. Please check out on the CIDM website, our membership levels page, or of course, contact me. We have 5 different membership level opportunities, the exciting new individual membership, as well as individual plus, silver, gold, and platinum. You can always stay informed with us, and please link with us on our CIDM group, as well as subscribing to all our events and upcoming in our publications. Today's webinar, Why Desktop Authoring is Still Favored Over Cloud-Based Authoring, with Andrew Douglas, Business Development Manager of Bluestream, and his special guest, Don Stevens, President of Comtech Services and Director of CIDM. Welcome to you both.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Trish. Right, so I think it's best that we get started. I'm going to bring in the presenter, Andrew, and say quickly goodbye to Patricia just for now, but obviously she'll join us again at the Q&A along with Dawn Stevens. So I will bring it over to you, Andrew. First of all, I will just start to share the slides. There we are. Take it away, Andrew.
That's great. Thanks so much, Harry, and thanks, Patricia. Great stuff there happening in our community. I'm sure I'll be at a few of those, so I might see a few of the attendees around. So thank you for joining us today. Let's get into this content now about why desktop authoring is still favored over cloud-based authoring. So before we even go into this presentation, I thought it was important to say, why is this even a topic? Why is this even becoming relevant? Well, in my experience, we're being contacted by a whole number of organizations that their struggle is to hold on to desktop authoring. So why would they be struggling? Well, of course, cloud is taking over, and in many cases, it's really powerful for obviously the modern technology infrastructure and applications, etc. But as many XML writers, technical writers, in the more advanced areas that are using oXygen and other applications are realizing, but specifically around oXygen, they have recognized that their desktop authoring is really important because it's giving them capabilities that they're not getting in the cloud. And so what's happening now in the industry is that we're seeing that a lot of organizations, vendors and competitors of ours are moving more into a cloud-based only and are doing very little support for this type of application. And then before I begin, I think it's important to note that if you're new into this environment and you're considering using oXygen, and I represent a CCMS vendor and a component content management system, which usually goes are put together because they're not all the same. You can get from as simply as a link into oXygen versus it being much more embedded. And why that's important in this world is because this is going to make a technical writer either use 2 systems rather than one that's much more embedded and stay within that single system. And depending on your usage and the capabilities, that can cause a number of issues in your ongoing time. And then I think finally to mention before we get into the presentation, why is this so important? Well, for a technical writer, this is where you're going to spend 90% of your life. This is the application that makes either your job very straightforward or it makes it challenging. So thank you for attending today, as no doubt there is interest from this community because you are those kinds of technical writers. So if we can get the next slide, please, Harry. And I think we've already done our introduction, so let's jump into the actual main presentation. Next slide. So if we want to bring out the full slide content, please. So the main area here is to really note that we're going to be speaking about oXygen XML predominantly around the DITA space today with regards to this, desktop authoring versus cloud-based authoring. Now, obviously, users here are oXygen users. If we've got any new people into this industry, what is oXygen? It is by far the most used editor in the marketplace today. Why do I make that mention? Well, because there's a number of vendors that have their own solutions or embedding alternative editors. They can have good use cases. And again, it's not good or bad. The reason I think that oXygen still remains number one, and certainly from my experience, I've worked at a couple of vendors out there, is that there are certain things that oXygen does that other editors don't necessarily do. And they're more in the advanced areas. And those are things like nested tables, if you're merging and copying, merging a lot of tables, nested lists. oXygen does these really well, especially when you're, as I said, copy and pasting from other pieces of content. It's all they do, and they've remained the leader in this field. So all I say there is, like, if you're new to this industry and you haven't picked an editor yet, then make sure that you really look through at what is contained within your content and the type of challenges you've got before you go and jump into a system, because that can make things harder or less attractive. And I think also go and check the integration that is apparent within the CCMS if you're using one of those, and how that works. Or even if you're using something like a Git or something like that, how's that working, and what kind of challenges or non-challenges is that going to create? Again, it's not good or bad. It's really on your business process, the type of content you're going, size of team, collaboration, etc. As you'll see today, the core capabilities that are really being highlighted by this type of user, it's a more advanced user that's really concerned with holding on to this desktop authoring. They're doing certain things and they require certain capabilities and performance because it's where they're undertaking these tasks on a daily basis. Next slide, please. So the main areas we want to look at in terms of why is this difference occurring? So the first area is platform compatibility and control. And that actually comes up in the full environment control with desktop tools, actually comes up in two areas. So firstly, micro. So you've got these desktop tools and you're seeing the way in which they're working, and they're just not able to, on a micro level, operate in all operating systems. And then you've got areas such as SVN that can be difficult as well. So next slide, please, Harry. Then you've got the minimized downtime and compatibility risks. And that really comes from, you're looking here at cloud outages, you're looking here at IT support. So if you're wedded to this system and you need it to work all the time, remember that within the desktop environment, you can also do things such as offline authoring in the desktop that you can't within the cloud. And if that IT system goes down, if that cloud goes down or it's being updated for any point and you've got a deliverable, then you're not going to be able to use that system. And that's become very important to our users as well. Then you have, on a macro level for the full environment with control and desktop, is you have low connectivity. So we've been speaking to a client recently that's in an area of England that has low connectivity, and they've been all for kind of cloud-based authoring. And all of a sudden they've identified that, wait a minute, there are really 5 core authors in our team of 30 that are going to need this kind of desktop capability. For them, it's the security patches. When they do their security patches, they need to get them out within the hour. That's published within the hour, ideally. So in systems where you've got these kinds of potential issues with connectivity, you really have to be careful as a potential customer of one of these systems and in choosing between these environments. So the other area is legacy systems. We've all got legacy systems that we're using, and within the desktop, there's a lot more support for those legacy systems than in the cloud, because really the vendors are trying to make this as simple as possible. All vendors are when they're dealing with the cloud. Yet in our world, well, in the world of technical writing, this desktop authoring supports those legacy systems, which can be really important. So again, analyze your requirements carefully if you're moving into this sector and you're a new user. Next slide, please, Harry. So then we have security and data management. So here you've got a wide array of areas. And obviously this is all about, you want your data to be secure, but also you need access to the systems. So if you've got on-premise systems, and there's this alignment with your documentation management, and you've got any issues there, that can cause big problems. You've also got issues that can arise, as it's saying there, syncing cloud platforms with legacy infrastructure. We've just mentioned that. Legacy infrastructure in the cloud can present issues in general, and in authoring, where you want such a performance area, that can become an area. So be careful about that. Then you have on the right, we've got local data storage, greater security. So the most secure system for your data, again, this is documentation. So how important is this? It might not be, but you might be here dealing with releases that only certain clients get access to. You might be dealing with data that is more sensitive than others. Well, then you want to really analyze the utilization of the desktop rather than the cloud for your authoring capability. We then have user control backups. So if you've got these internal document systems like your CCMS, and you've got all these version controls, then those backups you really want to have in your system. And if you have those locally rather than in the cloud, and if you have any issues in the cloud, it's going to avoid anything that can come up from there. And you've also got this kind of syncing of cloud platforms that can go on, updates, et cetera, that can get those out of sync. So as you move to the cloud, and if you have certain technology requirements, then you really want to look at this, authoring on the desktop much more closely, because it's going to avoid some of these issues. So cloud risks avoided there really shows that you're not reliable on third-party server uptime, or your IT has an issue, or they've got to do something to sync different environments. And there's lower exposure, as it's saying there, to external data breaches or compliance risks. And, as a writer, you just don't want to lose access to that content. You've put a lot of work into it, and this tends to be an area that we've seen that people are very sensitive to as well. Next slide, please, Harry. So as you can see there, we've got customization and advanced features. This is the one that I think is the one that I speak to customers most about. So in the cloud, you are not getting the full set of features that you've got on the desktop. So what are those areas? They tend to be advanced again. So again, we're not saying cloud is bad and desktop is good. It's just in certain scenarios, which in XDocs, especially in the enterprise, and especially if you're dealing with more advanced content where you've got a lot of versions going out, we've got a lot of languages going out, you tend to have more complex workflows for that type of thing. And you tend to have done customizations, and there's not the support for that in the cloud like there is in the desktop. Now, issues with table formatting and deep nested concept, these again, as I've mentioned, are really strong in oXygen, and not all of those capabilities are available in cloud-based editors that are available on the authoring editors. Now, they may deal with those in time. They're not available now, but as we'll see, there's some things that are outside of the control of oXygen that are going to keep to become issues. We've already mentioned one really, which is about this kind of access and uptime, et cetera, of the cloud that can cause issues here. So the other thing that the authoring does is it really supports a lot more advanced capabilities of complex functionality, which can be, the way in which the WYSIWYG's working, rendering, all of these types of things that a desktop application of oXygen can support versus a cloud-based application. Now, again, these are in the weeds, so check your, check your requirements. If you're already a user, you'll understand these requirements, which is why you're fighting for this. And then at the end, I'll say what we're going to do with this type of content to assist those that are already using it. But for those that are coming in, this again is something to watch out for. So next slide, Harry. Performance and speed, we've touched upon this. So if you're a writer and you have a pressing, which this is the problem, as in all jobs, you'll have certain periods where you have a lot of work to get out, a lot of releases to get out, or a number of security patches or a new version, and that content's going out the door very quickly. This is really important in certain operations. And that is the performance and speed at which you can not only complete your job, but then have that content be uploaded to wherever it needs to go to. So obviously when you have your local, you have faster, you've got no latency. In the cloud, you're always going to be dependent on how that cloud is operating, and there may be issues there. This will handle large project sizes. So if you're doing a desktop authoring and you've got very large projects going on, then if you've got that volume going through, which is really where this gets stressful when you're dealing with a lot of releases and a lot of team members that are involved with producing that content and getting it out the door, the cloud still struggles with that. That's what we hear in the marketplace. The other is workload. So as we're saying there, it's not just the project size, but when these times are happening. And it tends to be that they all happen at once, which none of us want to do and we all plan not to do. But it does tend that when I speak to users in this field and workers in this field, that it's optimized now for heavy use is the desktop authoring, which they really need, because they'll have a number of projects come through all at the same time that the team has to get out the door. And this is where cloud can become painful. And the limitations of cloud-based authoring in oXygen can become more significant. Next slide, please, Harry. So on a final note, we've got the learning curve and expertise. So this is the negative. It's not as user-friendly, the desktop authoring. It requires a bit more training. It requires a bit more insight. But by the very fact that you're fighting for desktop authoring, you're going to be doing more advanced things in desktop authoring. So if you've got a team that's new to this, then I would really say, pay attention to this and work with someone like CIDM that's got a lot of experience in setting up these types of initiatives and really training people to be able to use not only tools like oXygen, but also being able to train the type of tasks that they need to do in oXygen. Now, if you're not facing these kinds of hard tasks, then I would say that the cloud is really suitable for you because it is more straightforward to use. And the other thing that's powerful that we'll mention in the cloud is the collaboration. So, you will get all this structure, you will get all these advantages, you will get all of these pieces that you want to have in place in your oXygen desktop authoring. It's for the right scenario. If you're a more advanced user and you're doing more advanced content, then by nature, you need to go and do more training and become much more of an expert in this type of field, in this structured authoring field, because that's going to pay off and you're going to be required to do that because of the nature of challenge that you face. Next slide, please. So again, when we're looking at this type of thing, with robust desktop authoring, you're going to have advanced tracking change management and compare merge tools. So you're going to get those advanced capabilities, especially the merge is very, very, very important when you're doing things like versions. And if new users don't know this, there's this capability of branching and merging, which enables you to do things like translation, versions, test content. So you can utilize a copy and then do your work and then merge it back in at the end. That's really powerfully delivered by desktop authoring, and it's not so strong in the cloud. So again, you've got the whole version control and team workflows. So more advanced operations will have larger teams that are doing different versions. They've got their team workflows. They've got this complex, checking in, checking out, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's catered for a lot better in the desktop than it is in the cloud. And then if you've got you're really looking at the standards and pulling out the full value of systems such as DITA, and that's the principal one that we see in our world. Obviously, I work for a vendor that works with DITA, but certainly in the technical writing community, outside of things like heavy aviation and areas like that use a different system, then it's DITA. And if you want to get the full benefits of that structure and a standard-based authoring, then the desktop will give you that. Next slide, please, Harry. So, to conclude and to make sure that we understand all of the different areas that here, we've highlighted and done a summary of all of these areas. So, the comparison with cloud-based tools, and while I'm on this, the next thing that we're going to be releasing, so I'm working on a white paper at the minute, and the aim of this white paper is distribute this to technical writers. And if you're facing a challenge in holding on to your desktop authoring and explaining to your either your director or to the board why you should still have this when they want to move everything to the cloud, then this white paper that I'm going to be releasing in a couple of weeks' time will basically be a good piece of collateral that you can pass to them that will show all of the positives and negatives of this type of oXygen based authoring over cloud-based authoring. So hopefully that will help. We'll also be distributing this PowerPoint and we will have the recording of the webinar, so you won't have to take all this content down. But you won't have to summarize this either, because that white paper is going to allow you to have that, which I think is the purpose of this, is if you're in an organization that's challenging that in any way, or you're finding there's certain issues with a vendor not supporting you anymore, then really to make the case that you need this kind of capability to do your job well in certain cases, which no doubt if you're fighting for those cases, you'll have. So let's go through those. So there was platform compatibility, which as you can see there, it's optimized for, there's no specific OS requirements. You can do offline, and you can do your, it's always going to work when you want it to. There's no problems at all there in the platform capability when you're authoring in the desktop. In the cloud, you've got certain dependencies, and you've got certain reliances that you want to make sure that you have there, and it requires the internet access for you to be able to perform. Pretty obvious, but important to highlight to, again, to any members of your organization who might be saying, hey, why are you holding on to desktop? We don't need that. Security, that's a great argument to make. We've gone over that. Like, your data is the most protected by having it locally based rather than in a cloud. Customization, again, like looking at your content models. And again, this highlights in working with people, consultants that have the capability like CIDM, because they're going to enable you to really look at what type of content you need, any customizations you need, and that will help to identify if you need desktop authoring rather than cloud-based authoring, because you get a high level of customization available in the oXygen desktop authoring that you're going to lose in cloud-based authoring. So not applicable to everyone, but very important to identify if you need that. Then we have performance. You've got the fastest performance available. This is why writers really, really, really push for the system, is because you're not ever wedded to the cloud. And if you've got those deliverables, it's not going to cost you time in either being able to create or publish your content that the cloud can do. You then have collaboration. So collaboration is much better achieved in the cloud. So, when we're looking at things like this, again, if you've got that kind of team, it depends on the way in which the teams are working, because you've got those versions, you've got the check-in, check-out, a very large team. But in terms of direct collaboration, that is best achieved by a cloud-based tool. And really all you've got in the desktop authoring is through version control. But many existing users work through this because they want the additional capabilities of the desktop authoring that have been mentioned. But it's just something to note that, like, if you were saying pure collaboration, the cloud-based option would definitely be stronger. Then on the final one, learning curve, we mentioned about that as well. Like, when you're looking at doing this, like, if you're a more advanced user, then that will take more training. And again, we'd recommend using an organization such as CIDM to really get you up to speed if you're new into this world of structured authoring and DITA. It's money well spent, that's for sure. Next slide, Harry. So in conclusion, why is oXygen number one? So it has capabilities that other editors don't have. So check your requirements very, very, very carefully. It performs very well at highly complex, high volume, high density, essentially an advanced technical writing frameworks. oXygen is still by far the number one choice for organizations. It's linked to advanced structured content authoring. It's always been there. That's just what they've done. They're tested, they're battle tested. It's been out there in the market for some time. It's a solid tool. And for users that use it, they love it because it works, and it works well, and it does all of the tasks that they want. Now, if you're still looking at this and you're evaluating them, remember offline performance. That can be really important as well, because even if you have a scenario where your own power goes down, your own internet connection goes down, you can still work offline with the desktop authoring. But as we've said, the balanced perspective is that you also look at collaboration and I think ease of use as well. Like it's an easier to use interface is the cloud-based application. And in time, oXygen will deal with certain, security and updates and the whole performance of the cloud and the way in which enterprises work with the cloud that aren't going to be totally solved by oXygen ever. And those have got to be looked at carefully. Again, if you're in a very, very high output, large team, largely complex, then that tends to be an area where those technical writers, certainly that I speak to, fight for the use of this tool because it really does make a difference in their lives. That's it. I think, Harry, we'll conclude with that. And we've got a few questions. Did we have any questions from the audience, first of all, Harry?
Yes, we do. Yeah, thank you very much, Andrew. That's fantastic, genuinely. Okay, so what I'm going to do is quickly have a look. We have one question from Steve, and I'll read it aloud. So this is authoring locally versus authoring in the cloud, but you can still stay connected to the cloud, e.g. for backups via OneDrive, as it seems the biggest risk locally is failure of the local machine. Do I have that right? Thank you.
Well, at this point, I'll bring in Dawn because Dawn is has been dealing with this for years and is out there in the field speaking to writers and will know this very clearly. So I know what my answer would be, Dawn, but that would be half on a on a whim rather than what writers are actually experienced. So have you had any previous knowledge of like any of these writers having an issue with storing their content locally rather than into the cloud when they're working? And what's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I would definitely still recommend that, yes, you want to have it a place where you can, you're storing it in the cloud or you're storing it on your CCMS that, is cloud-based for a couple of reasons. One is certainly, I don't know that it's as big, the biggest risk being the failure of the local machine, but it is it's the risk of not getting a backup, right? So if you continue to keep something checked out and you're working locally for quite some time, and then there is a failure, you don't have a backup, and so writing it to the cloud on a regular basis, as well as remembering to do that. Is that if you're connected, staying connected and being able to just automatically save to the cloud all the time. That helps because otherwise people forget sometimes too that they've got it local, and you have the issues with I went on vacation and now nobody can work on it because they didn't check it in, or those types of things. Yeah. Or again, as you mentioned, collaboration aspect of things is if there is a lot of people needing to access that same file, we want to stay, in the cloud as well.
And in a way, Dawn, as well, I think there's that kind of that certain users remain on desktop and certain users go to cloud. Depending, again, it can be a mix of users here in the organization.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think it's all about. From what you were talking about really is, I think from the question, yes, you're really talking about the advantages of authoring in a more robust tool, some of the features that are available and those types of things that are maybe not available in a cloud version of the authoring tool. But I think we do need to separate it, which is what I think the question is about, is that we're not talking about storing things in, on your local machine. We are still wanting to have that, whatever you do, content management system, probably, or, Git or whatever, but that is all someplace where you still need to be centralizing your content, or you've got all sorts of file management issues.
Yeah, it's definitely not in isolation, is it? That you use your local store because, it's reliable, but you still need to do the cloud because that's where you're going to be doing a lot of collaboration, etc. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. I just think it's the reason why it's seen as a benefit, and highlighted as a benefit, is that if the cloud ever has an issue and you've got your content stored locally, for writers and for all of us, the key is losing our data. And if you've done a heavy project, and you're writing a heavy document and you lose that document, it's terrible. So you've got a fail safe at least there. I don't think we're arguing against the cloud, just when is it right and when do you get that extra level of security by having a desktop? again, for more advanced users. Thanks, Harry. Any other questions?
Yeah, we do. We've got a couple, actually. They're coming in. So Philip has asked, well, it's more of a statement, actually. He said, I think that using an advanced tool like oXygen, which has features such as full publication validation, XPath, and regular expressions, enables training opportunities to advance writers' capabilities and skills. Would you agree or would you disagree?
That's definitely for you, Dawn.
Yeah, absolutely. These are, they're definitely features that I use. And I think one of the things I wanted to add to what Andrew has said is that one of the reasons that many of our clients, while they may have a web tool or a cloud tool, they will also still have versions of desktop because of some of these features that Philip is mentioning, is that there are just some things that many of the web tools won't let you do. Like you can't maybe write a schematron, and schematron uses XPath, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
While I'm writing my schematron rules, I want to be using my desktop oXygen because I can just say, okay, what is the right XPath to this particular item, so I get my rule correct, and oXygen helps me, with that. And so from
that's a great example. Yep.
And so forth, very, very helpful to have those. To have something like that available, especially for your advanced people. So I certainly see a lot of companies have, even if most of their writers are working on the cloud, as you're saying, because of collaboration and maybe the simplicity of they're not doing a lot of the advanced features, keeping the advanced features to modify style sheets, modify schematron, modify your DTDs. All of those types of things aren't typically supported in a cloud version, and they're using their desktop for that. And definitely advancing those different capabilities.
Again, it's fitness for purpose, isn't it? I don't think we're saying one bad, one good. We're saying analyze what you need, because in certain situations it's either not available or it's not going to perform in the way that you're going to require it to.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, this is what in the ideal state for a client who comes to Comtech or CIDM, they haven't chosen their tool yet. They're saying, okay, we think we want to go to a structured authoring environment. We want to do these types of things. And as you said, what we help them do is make that analysis of, well, how do you intend, or what kinds of content are you trying to create? How do you intend to go about creating them? What kinds of collaboration do you need? What types of publishing do you need? What types of advanced features do you need? Especially in the reuse area is a key piece of some of the web tools versus desktop. Of some of the advanced DITA reuse, like conref push or conref range, just don't work well in the web environment, but or from a programming perspective, they still work, but they're very hard to implement. Whereas in the desktop, they're much easier to implement, right? So do they need those things? Many times they don't. So it's that full analysis that we help them go through. We actually have, I think it's 16 different spreadsheets, honestly, that all have different requirements on them to talk through. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And so on, to really itemize that out. And frequently the solution is not everybody goes to web or whatever. It is a combination of, most of our writers will be able to be fine with this. We need a couple of desktop licenses for that, et cetera.
And you can't make that, you can't get that answer until you've done that. I mean, you don't have those sheets for no reason.
Right.
Like, you have to have that level of granularity before you can make that decision. So if anyone's going new into the market, this is an essential step. Like, you don't want to get there, because either you're not going to be able to do things that are vital in the production of your documentation, or you're going to have a very unpleasant, as you're saying, they work in principle, conref, keyref is doing in this type of way, but they're not easy to do programmatically in the cloud, and will take you a lot of time and make your working day not very pleasant. So again, if you want to sleep easy and get the right answer, then definitely a piece of work like that is highly recommended.
Both well said. Totally agree. So we've got another question, just move along. So Stacy has asked, can you give an example of cloud-based DITA authoring tools? Struggling to understand the alternative, since pretty much everyone uses oXygen as their CCMS.
Well, oXygen has two versions. They have their desktop version and they have their their web version, which is typically what's integrated with the CCMSs. And so I guess from that's one complete example right there, is that there is cloud-based oXygen, and then there's the desktop oXygen, and there are different features. And as I know that your poll had said, people say that advanced features were one of the main reasons that authors want their desktop version.
Yep.
And so things like I was talking about with maybe, if you have a use case for conref push or conref range, which most even companies don't, right? Maybe that's not important, but if you have a case for that, that would be a potential reason that you would care about it. There's some nice things in desktop oXygen for setting up condition sets, for example. So if you have a lot of complex conditional processing, then you go, well, which is going to show if I choose these particular things. There's ways to set up condition sets in desktop that you can't currently do in web. So there's those types of things. And then in terms of other cloud-based tools, a lot of the CCMSs and actually yours, right, has a cloud tool as well as supporting oXygen. So they're typically based with the particular CCMS, who will oftentimes, in fact, I think most CCMSs have the ability to integrate with oXygen in some way, but also potentially have their own web-based tool for the casual author who may not be always trying to do any of the advanced things, but oftentimes it works for the majority of the writing team. And then depending on their needs, maybe they have information architects or something like that who need the more advanced features.
Yeah, and I think it's a good question, but really we're focusing on oXygen today because this has become a real issue with organizations as they aim to stay on desktop authoring and justify it within their organizations that are becoming increasingly cloud-based. But there's definitely other editors out there. The only thing that I'd say again is, like, it doesn't mean that oXygen's the one or not the one for you, but a piece of work like, Dawn has mentioned, in evaluating what you're doing with your content, you might not have these more advanced cases. If you do, then oXygen, the reason it's so widely used is because it fits that use case very well. And in certain times, it's uniquely able to handle certain things that you want to do. I had clients that were doing a lot of copy and pasting tables, and the only thing that would do it simply and painlessly was in oXygen. And they tested out a whole number of other tools. So yes, there are others out there, but I think we're focused on that today, because it's the main tool that's used in the DITA community, which we as CCMS vendors represent, and also because it's the number one tool for a reason. And this scenario is really playing out in the oXygen world at the minute.
Yeah, agreed. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, Philip. And thank you, Stacey, for your questions. We've got a few more that keep coming in, so we're going to rush on to them. So Michael has asked, I have dozens of writers, many of whom came from desktop oXygen, and we moved to cloud or /CCMS, only oXygen, and never looked back and no complaints. Do we provide full desktop to our content system developers and IAs, but those are rarely used? I find we all have almost zero DITA error logs to debug with the combination of oXygen web in the CCMS for 4 years running now. And it's just added, and I came from a shop with 1,500 desktop oXygen writers and would never go back to rank and file writers. So a little bit of disagreement there, but do you have any comments on that at all?
No, it's perfectly correct.
Cool.
Again, it's use case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I've certainly seen many companies that actually successfully go that way. I have also seen people who struggle. Sometimes I see it's the familiarity, right? What you learned is the thing that you're most comfortable with. And so good for Michael that all of his writers who were in desktop went, oh yeah, fine, we can deal with web, and that really probably relates to what features were they using and what ones they weren't. To Andrew's point earlier, that there's a lot of stuff you can do in desktop oXygen, and a lot of people don't use all of it, right? And that's why it does appear very complex. And so, yeah, if you're able to make that transition, there's certainly a lot. I think Andrew even said that it's a lot easier in many ways to use that if you don't need those features. So, yeah, there's plenty of those types of use cases there. I think it does go back to the use case of, do you need any of these advanced features? What are you trying to do? And so he mentions, rarely used desktop. but rarely is still more than 0, right? And so sometimes there is that need. I always like to tell my customers, you might want a backup desktop system just for those rare cases where you need to make some kind of a change, but mostly it will, it will work in the web. So.
So it's a good point, Michael. Next question is from Lucille. What cloud/CCMS tool are you guys using?
Well, I actually represent a vendor, so that's a scary question. Wait a minute.
And my answer is all, because we're consultants, right? So I pretty much have licenses to pretty much any kind of combination that you want to have, because I need to for my clients. So I don't know if it's necessarily a fair question, but yeah, there's plenty of combinations. If you want to ask about my preference, I personally absolutely prefer to use a desktop, because I am a consultant and because I have all of those advanced things that I have to do for my clients. I have to do a lot of refactoring and things like that are easier to do in the desktop. So certainly that's my preference, but my clients, have different needs than I do.
I think it might
that's fair as well. Sorry, Harry, I was just going to say that's really fair, because it depends on the use case. And me as the sales guy, so I hate using sales in this type of, because it's really to be an educational point. But the thing about Bluestream is we don't have our own editor, and we've done that especially. So we're very, very wedded to supporting oXygen, and we do it both on the desktop and in the cloud. So if oXygen's kind of key to your operation, then the only thing I would check, because I've worked at other vendors and literally it's a link. And working in 2 systems, especially if you're doing it on the desktop, can be painful for authors. But again, it might not be. It's all about checking through, working with consultants, finding out what's right for you, rather than, hey, this is good or this is bad. It depends on the situation and scenario that you face and what you need from your requirements.
Good answer. However, we have a little bit of context. So Lucille was actually directing that question in chat to Michael, who just answered before. Yeah, again, fair enough, Lucille, but we might want to keep it context for the questions as well. So, and Philip, last question. Philip has just asked a second question. Do you see writing teams hiring DITA experts and engineers for being able to customize DITA OT and develop tools for quality and determining data analytics? Teams without an in-house expert will likely choose the more simplistic cloud platforms over desktop authoring. So what would you think about that?
That's an interesting question, isn't it, Dawn?
Yeah, I think there's a point to what he's saying of that. If you don't have the experts, you'll choose a more simplistic thing. But I think that goes more to, I'm not sure I entirely agree with that, because your DITA OT customization, regardless of how simple it is to author, you still have to publish, and that's kind of a different story of what you need to customize from that. So do we see writing teams hiring it? It really depends on the size, right? If you've got a big team like Michael's team of 1,500 people, or that type of thing, of like, yeah, I'm positive that he would have, you can speak to that or not, but I would certainly expect that he would have DITA experts and engineers who would be in charge of the DTDs, any kind of specializations, or constraining the DTDs in DITA, people who would be writing the schematron rules, people who would be customizing the all your different publication outputs to PDF to HTML, etc. And you'd have enough people to support that would justify it. Lots of people that, we have lots of clients who are our long-term clients who, they're using the web because it is more simplistic from the desktop authoring, as Philip is saying. And then they use us as, consultants or as a retainer to just, as if a change is needed, to go back to Michael's point of rarely do they need to use those things. Yeah, it's not like they have us on a continuous, like we charge them hundreds of hours a month or something, but if they have some kind of a need, they can come back and just say, hey, could you do it? So you can manage that, the more advanced things that you might need, rather than have the tool and have somebody trained to do some of those types of things. There's certainly plenty of consultants available who can help you with that.
Totally.
Yeah, and that's in our experience as well. It's the size of the team. What we are seeing in even smaller teams, though, is there tends to be, and this can be in a team of like 10 or 15 writers, there tends to be someone who's dedicated to publishing, you know, and they will really, under that will come the schematron, the outputs, they're checking the content all the time. We're seeing a lot more of that in the last couple of years than I used to. Like my job solely, I do a bit of writing, but I look after the output, let's say, which I think is being referred to here. Great question.
It really has to do with volume on that too, because you certainly, if you've got the interest as a writer of like, hey, I'd like to know how to manage an output or that type of stuff, you might be able to do that and still maintain your regular job because it is a very rare occurrence. Or, you can do your basic management. In fact, that's what we do when we create somebody's style sheets for them in the first place. We teach them of like, here's your style sheet and how you would make simple changes, right? So they can do it themselves. And it's only they come back if they need, like, oh, we need a whole brand new style sheet or something like that. So there's definitely opportunities, but if those are kinds of things that interest you, that is potentially why you need to have that copy of your desktop authoring tool to be able to do those types of more advanced things.
Cool. Yeah, great answer.
Yeah, totally agree. So we have one last question. How easy is it these days to migrate from one CCMS to another?
Ooh,
very broad question.
Is that a question?
I was going to say, very broad.
Depends on the specializations. So this is to get this is something that people miss all the time when they're picking CCMSs. If you move away from DITA standards and you move into certain systems that have had specializations written around them, and I know the two systems in particular, they're very difficult to get off of, because when you do a migration, you're going to have to handle all of those types of specialties. So the more that you can, certainly at Bluestream, we adhere purely to the DITA standard. So it's not the greatest sales or business strategy in the world, believe it or not, because you can migrate so easily. You could pull our content off into GitHub. I know there's another vendor that does this as well. They stick to the DITA specification purely.
So let me tweak what you just said. So I want to define specialization. So DITA has its own part of the key piece of DITA, in fact, is that you can specialize it. You can constrain it and you can specialize it following the DITA rules. Those transfer just fine from
yes, exactly. Sorry,
yeah. You have done those. What Andrew is talking about is if your CCMS has its own specialized implementations, they have specific ways that they do things that are not that may still follow a DITA specialization, but they're not something you can take with you, right? It's their specializations, and so
not in the DITA spec,
right? Exactly.
Not to the DITA specification.
And so you can bring your own specializations and move everything. But if you, depending on the system that you're in, you may have specific things that they present themselves in oXygen and everything else as though that they are standard DITA, but they're not really standard DITA. So you need to kind of know that distinction before you can decide whether you'd easily be able to move out of it. The other aspect of it that has nothing to do with the specializations and everything else is, what are you doing with your metadata? So if you have used DITA, I make the distinction of metadata in a topic versus metadata on a topic. And what distinction means is if it's in it, you're using the DITA elements to define all of your metadata and so forth, then obviously you export that topic from one system to another, it comes with all this metadata. If, however, you're putting it on it, meaning that you're using the CCMS's metadata capabilities, which many of them have, then that's a little bit harder to export all of that out and keep it associated with your topics and in the appropriate way. And some metadata you may just decide you don't care about, right? Things like all systems are going to automatically capture who created this topic, when was the last time it was touched, and that type of stuff. And that, while you could keep it inside DITA, it has an authoring element, an author element, it has date elements and so forth that you could use. Most people will say, well, we're just going to keep that in the CCMS. And if that becomes very valuable stuff for especially people like in regulatory industries that need to have, when was it last updated and all those types of things. If that's something that is associated in your CCMS as opposed to in your topic, then when you transfer, all CCMSs, when you transfer them in, are going to put, hey, this was created on this initial
That's really
date,
interesting.
right? And so that could be a challenge in the way you migrate.
So if you work with regulatory clients like that and you're aware of that type of thing, do you advise them to use that date stamp in the DITA area then?
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
really interesting.
Yeah. I've never thought about really wants to plan for, what if this CCMS doesn't work? And yet that is stuff that we will, as we help them with their information model, how they use DITA, is to consider those things, because we don't want to plan for failure, but yet we probably want to be smart about it too. And so if we have to have things like migration dates or approval dates or things like that in the always there, so that we can do, whatever changes, change management type of things to show the regulatory agencies what has changed since a certain date. Those are all things that then we're going to say, well, you need to use some of the DITA tags and elements and attributes, in fact, even if you're having to track between releases or things like that, to ensure that you always have them. Right.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for further context, Steve has followed up with his question. I think you've already addressed it, Dawn, this is migration from non-DITA to potentially DITA. So I think it pretty much covers that anyway. So great stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the migration from non-DITA to DITA typically is going to involve, the process I would recommend is still if you're going to DITA, how are you going to use DITA, right? So what would be the DITA elements you're going to use, the DITA mapping strategies, linking strategies, the reuse strategies, anything that you intend to implement, and then do a mapping of, here's my non-DITA stuff, how am I going to map it to these DITA elements and so forth. And that's done in a variety of ways depending on what your source content is. But paragraphs can go to paragraphs and lists can go to lists, but what does a bold go to? Does it go to a UI control? Does it just go to bold? Does it go to UI control because it's actually about something on your user interface, and that's why you're bolding it and that type of stuff. So figuring out that mapping, and there's plenty of organizations that will help you do that migration and write scripts for you and things like that, so that it's a relatively painless process if you've got the money to do it. If you're doing it by yourself manually and you don't, and you're kind of just copying and pasting some of what Andrew was talking about early on, of like, well, how well does copying something that you have in a Word document or a PDF document into your authoring tool, how well can it actually already interpret it? And certainly, oXygen has a lot of good features of it can kind of understand what you're copying and create the DITA tags for you. So it definitely depends on the state of your non-DITA content, and kind of what your plans are of, am I going to do it myself? Am I going to pay somebody to write some scripts and so forth? And like I said, there's plenty of organizations that can do that for you. But there's also
requirements on top as well, isn't there, Dawn? Like, I can be coming today with my Word and I'm just doing PDF, but I want to do PDF and digital. So what else do I need to tag onto that content when I got it? Have I got any references that are going to help me? And, in Word and PDF, okay, there's very little, but at least getting it over and understanding what you're trying to set as a benchmark before you get going is not an insignificant task. It's like the more you can prepare and get yourself ready in this world, the more advantages you're going to have downline, because if you've got those kind of challenges, it can be difficult. But again, you might not have, so doing a piece of analysis is always important, I think, from specialists in the area. Like we had a call recently from an engineering team that are considering some stuff, and like, they're looking at data migration, but they've never built a DITA schema. They don't, it's like, okay, So yes, always get a consultant involved if you can, and do a piece of analysis at the start of these types of projects. I definitely recommend that if you have the budget to be able to do that.
Well said. Right. That was the very last question, and perfect timing, because we're now just at the last minute of the hour. I just want to thank everyone for attending, everyone's questions. It's been fantastic. We'll be following up shortly by posting this webinar on YouTube. So if you do want to, go back and just quickly look back at any of this, feel free. We'll follow up with an email shortly and just ask, did you enjoy this webinar? there's anything you would like to add. But again, thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you very much to the audience, and we'll all speak to you very soon. Thanks very much, everyone. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you.